Would you please give him a warm, epic welcome?
I think I'm on. Yep, I'm on. Since I'm old, I need glasses. I'm really happy to be here. At my age, I'm happy to be anywhere. Had a couple of surprises already today. Got a gentleman in the back. I did a lecture down at Granbury yesterday for the paranormal conference, and the gentleman in the back was down there, and I just saw him walk in the door. I started doing Roswell tours out there, and I have a couple here that did that tour a couple of weeks ago. I figured they had enough of me by doing the tour, but they came back for more, which is very nice of them. These Roswell tours I'm talking about, I have a couple of brochures back there. It's about a 2-hour tour in town where I share with the people that were involved in the incident. I knew most of the, or a lot of the first-hand witnesses. By being with the museum for 2.5 years, I was able to meet and know many of the first-hand witnesses before they died. And that's a problem because they're 80 or 90 years old if they're still alive. And we're running out of time real fast. So if you get that way sometime, there's a website you can go to book the tours. He's got a calendar there that shows the available dates and things like that. And I was telling the couple that when I started doing these, the guy in Oregon that books them for me called and said, would you be interested in doing tours? And I said, yeah. I figured I'd do 2 or 3 a month. In March, I had 35. April, I had 31, and I'm booked up through October. People from all over the world. I had a couple from Chile last week, from South America. I've had people from New Zealand and Australia. But what I'm going to do today is share my 4 areas of research with you. For the past several years, I've been concentrating my research on the 1947 Roswell incident, Area 51, underground bases, and I'll talk about all 3 of those in this presentation. I'll talk about Roswell because after 66 years, it refuses to go away. Area 51 because for the most part, according to our government, it doesn't exist. And underground bases because our government is simply lying to us about them. In addition to that research, in November of 2001, I was asked to join the Great Pyramids of Giza Research Association Advisory Board. And that's some research I'm involved with that I want to share with you also. So we have a lot to cover, and I'm hopeful that you'll find it interesting and informative. This research that I've chosen to dedicate my life to is controversial at times and requires a tough outer skin when the skeptics, the critics, and the debunkers decide to take aim at you. Trust me, this research and study of ufology is much more difficult than anything I dealt with in my 36 years of civil engineering with the Texas Highway Department. Because of my brutal honesty, I've been fortunate in that I've not been questioned too often, and when I have been, I prefer to go public, to expose the critics and reveal their true nature, which in most cases is attacking people rather than the data. That's much easier for them to do. I have found out through the years that sharing information with the public, whether it's through my website, through television or radio interviews, editorials or lectures, such as this, there is one common denominator that prevails: truth. And allowing people to make their own decision always wins out. You're here because you have some interest in the subject, or perhaps out of curiosity. So what I'll simply be doing in this presentation is sharing some of my research with you that I've obtained through the years, and I'll let you decide what you want to believe. There's a tremendous amount of substantial information available to support the fact that our planet probably has been and still is being visited by extraterrestrials from other worlds. I just cannot be egotistical enough to think that we're the only living thing in the universe. The curiosity in UFOs is in fact the 2nd most popular item on the World Wide Web. That's a Roper poll 72% of Americans believe the government is not telling the public everything it needs to know about UFOs. 68% of those surveyed think the government knows more about extraterrestrial life than it's letting on. And 55% say that the government does not share enough information with the public in general. And 60% said when national security is not at risk, the United States government should not withhold information about UFO sightings and potential encounters with extraterrestrials. I put a note at the bottom, those percentages are higher than politicians get elected by. And they need to start paying attention. There's no doubt in my mind that the government, not everyone in the government, but several within our government and certain military leaders are definitely concealing information about the existence of UFOs as well as other things that you and I as taxpayers are footing the bill for, while being lied to about their existence or the truth pertaining to it. Today, cover-up is a way of life, whereas 60 years ago, people in general felt very differently about their leaders and the way our government operated. Back then, the public respected them, possibly because they earned that respect. I seriously doubt that anyone in this audience could name 5 people in the government that they respect. Time's up. Another problem, as I see it, is the fact that many people just don't care if extraterrestrials exist or not. For our young people, it's no big deal, having been raised to Star Wars, Star Trek, The X-Files, and other shows, and they pretty much accept the fact that ETs probably do exist. It's also been proven that the more educated one is, the more likely they will agree that there is life elsewhere. And then there's the news media. For the most part, they make light of any UFO events if they finally do report it. Some of us have researched this subject, and some of you that have had an interest in it, however, feel this could be the biggest story of the millennium, and we continue to pursue it. I, for one, want my children and grandchildren to know what their future might hold for them, and if it involves a higher technological species than we are, which wouldn't take much, by the way, I think they should know that. And our government should quit lying to us about some of the things they do or do not tell us. Most of you have been raised in a box. Throughout your lives, we've been told and taught things by others, by our parents, our teachers, and our priests and pastors. For many, that information is enough, and nothing is questioned. For some of us, we stray outside of the box, and we request more information, as in my case, in the study of ufology, and the fact that I believe there's a tremendous amount of information that we're not told or was not told the truth. Who has given a few the authority to withhold that information from us? People often ask me, if in fact there are aliens visiting our planet, why don't they communicate with us? And my simple answer is, why would they want to? If they can get here from wherever they're from, they undoubtedly have intelligence, knowledge, and technology far superior to ours. Since, for example, we can't go there. What do we have to offer to a species so far advanced of us? The human being is the only species on the planet that cannot live with each other like other species do because of such things as nationalities and borders, the color of their skin, religious beliefs, etc. We're destroying the planet, the rainforest, and the ozone layer as fast as we can. So why would they want to communicate with us? What can we offer to them? Very little, as I see it, and I hope that we don't destroy ourselves in the process. Now, before I review some thoughts with you about the 1947 Roswell incident that I think are still important, I'd like to share a theory with you that I've had for several years about the incident. What if, and this is my theory, what if we recovered a crashed flying saucer and retrieved some bodies on the Foster Ranch northwest of Roswell in July 1947, and some 60 years later we still don't know what we have, how it operates, or where it came from? Would the government go public with that information? I don't think so. They would deny it ever happened, and primarily for the military benefit that could be derived from such technology, would not admit it happened, at least until all the benefits of having it were exhausted. I think it's possible that whatever was recovered in 1947 is still classified for whatever reason the government or the military believe. Because people are more educated today than they were in 1947, I do not buy into the possibility that the government is afraid of panic or fear by the public. Although I do believe there would be some concerns in the financial world, the religions of the world, and in the leadership of several nations. It's strictly my own theory, but what I wanted to share with you. Since the Roswell incident, research started in the late 1970s, hundreds, perhaps thousands of first-hand witnesses have been interviewed by various researchers. I personally have talked to between 100 and 150 first, second, and third-hand witnesses. In most cases, the overwhelming information obtained leans towards an extraterrestrial craft of unknown origin with bodies crashed on the New Mexico desert near Roswell in 1947. Very few believe it was anything of our government, or the Russians, or the Germans, or the Japanese. So whose was it? Hopefully in our lifetime we'll know the truth. But as I get older, that possibility seems less likely. But it will certainly not discourage some of us from continuing to research the truth because it's too important to know the truth. We continue to lose first-hand witnesses as time takes its toll on some of the people involved. Most of those that were involved in 1947 are now in their 80s if they're still alive. Others that were involved have decided to embellish or exaggerate their involvement, which creates problems for us researchers. Still others refuse to talk about it after all these years due to their commitment to the government or the military. By being sworn to secrecy many years ago and still have that respect for the original leaders and the government after all these years. As a researcher, that makes my job difficult, but I respect them and wish in some cases we had that respect for our leaders today. I get new names every so often of new witnesses, and I'll get a phone number, and I'll call them, and the first thing I'll ask them is, what do you know about the Roswell incident? Invariably, they'll tell me, I wasn't there. Well, I have the 1947 Roswell Army Airfield yearbook, which is like a high school yearbook. It has individual pictures of each person that was stationed there, their name, their rank, and the squadron they were in. So I tell them, I'm looking at your picture. You were here. Okay, I was there, but I'm not going to talk about it. Basically, that's the end of the story. If I push them, they hang up on me. They're afraid of losing their retirement. They're afraid for their safety, and they're afraid for their family's safety. People have been threatened over Roswell, and these guys still will hold that secret. Many of them take it to the grave with them. The photographs taken in General Ramey's office in Fort Worth at Carswell Air Force Base in July 1947 by James Bond Johnson continues to be one of the smoking guns in resolving the Roswell incident. Johnson passed away in 2006, a few years after I had interviewed him, and in 3 different interviews done by David Rudiak, Kevin Randall, and myself, Johnson had started to embellish his involvement and changed his story. The interviews are posted on my website, truthseeker@roswell.com. Several groups have attempted to analyze one of the photographs taken by Johnson where General Ramey is holding a piece of paper with the typed words facing the camera. David Rudiak, as well as several others, are doing some excellent work in trying to decipher what is written on that paper that General Ramey is holding. What I'm talking about is this piece of paper right here. That's a teletype. Now, when I look at pictures, I don't look for pretty faces. On the wall, or on the radiator, is a necktie and a hat. That belonged to Major Marcel, the intelligence officer who brought debris to Carswell, to General Ramey, for him to see it. On the floor is a brown wrapping paper. That is off of a brand new roll of brown wrapping paper. Had anything been packaged up in that and taken from Roswell to Fort Worth, there would be creases and that would be wrinkled. That's a brand new piece of brown paper. So we know that's a staged picture. There's very little doubt in the minds of most researchers that part of the memo that Ramey is holding reads victims of the wreck. Weather balloons and mogul balloons didn't have victims. There is some disagreement on what the entire message says, but it appears there is no disagreement in the words victims of the wreck. In that picture, he's got the teletype crumbled up, or you can't see the type. Other words and phrases that seem to appear in the message include the word disc and a reference to sending out a press release about weather balloons. The analysis of that photograph continues today as better equipment becomes available and the clarity of the original photograph can be enhanced in order to read what is actually typed on that paper. General Ramey covered the story up in 1947 by stating it was simply a weather balloon, misidentified by the elite 509 bomb wing stationed at Roswell. Now, the words victims of the wreck are on that memo, and that's pretty plain. We can read that. There are only about 14 words in the English language that have the letters B, 2 I's, and an S in the same location as victims. And we don't believe violins, Yiddish, yipping, or virgins have anything to do with the crashed disc recovered in Roswell in 1947. Here's the words victims of the wreck. Some of the other words on there are balloon cover story, ship to somewhere. We haven't been able to read that yet. There's about 7 or 8 lines of type. And as we get better equipment, better computer equipment, we hope that we can read the whole memo. That could be the smoking gun right there. 47 years later, in 1994, the Air Force would admit in their report that Ramey was wrong about it being a weather balloon. It was a mogul balloon, M-O-G-U-L. Some of us researchers that continue to investigate the Roswell incident are convinced that after 4 different excuses by the Air Force, we still have not been told what actually happened near Roswell in 1947, and we continue to search for new information. Some of the Freedom of Information Act requests that I've submitted to the Military Personnel Records Center in St. Louis about personnel assigned to the Roswell Army Airfield in 1947 continue to be returned with a generic statement stating that the service records of that individual I'm requesting may have been destroyed in a fire at the center on July 12, 1973. New Mexico Congressman Stephen Schiff received a similar response from the General Accounting Office when he did his investigation into the Roswell incident in 1955. Schiff was told that the records for the Roswell Army Airfield were all destroyed, but they had no knowledge of who destroyed them or why. Those were incoming and outgoing records of the only atomic bomb group in the world at the time, and you can believe the GAO if you want to. Personally, I do not believe that the records of the only atomic bomb group in the world in 1947 were destroyed. The location and the number of crash sites continues to frustrate us also. The Corn Ranch site just north of Roswell and west of US 285 was made famous by Schmidt and Randall in books in the early 1990s. Some military witnesses have supported that site. However, it's my belief that if that site has any validity, it's only as a diversionary site. Since Ragsdale passed away in 1955, we may never know which, if any, of his affidavits were true. Personally, I cannot, without much more research, put any confidence in the Ragsdale site. This is Roswell down here in the corner. This is 285 that goes up to Vaughn, up to the Klein's Corner. And straight up from there you go to Santa Fe. If you go west 50 miles, you're in Albuquerque. The Corn Ranch site is about 22 miles north of town. The Jim Ragsdale site is out here in the Capitan Mountains, 70 miles west. This is the site I put most confidence in, Corona debris field. That's where the rancher found the debris, and that's the one that I think has the most validity. By the way, you could hide a whole squadron of UFOs out there in that desert, and nobody'd ever know they're there. The Corona debris field site, located on what was the Foster Ranch in 1947, is to me, based on years of research by many individuals, the official crash site of the Roswell incident. That was the location as described by the ranch foreman, Mac Brazel, where he found debris scattered over an area several hundred yards wide by 3/4 of a mile long. That's also the site where Major Jesse Marcel and Captain Cabot went to investigate the scene and collected some of the debris prior to military cleaning it up. There's very strong possibility that another site existed a short distance from the debris field where the actual bodies were found. That will continue to be investigated and hopefully verified. Stanton Friedman, the original civilian Roswell investigator, has for years mentioned the possibility of two craft having a mid-air collision, with one craft going down on the plains of San Augustine, west of Socorro, and the other crashing at the Corona debris field. The last excuse given by the Air Force was case closed, where the Air Force said that the bodies recovered in the Roswell incident were anthropomorphic crash test dummies. The Air Force, however, didn't mention that the crash test dummies weren't used until 1953, 6 years after the incident. That's a minor point, though, when you've been lying for 60 years. Perhaps you can now better understand the difficult task we researchers have with several crash sites to investigate, the witnesses that embellish your experience or involvement or due to have memory difficulties, and those that flat refuse to talk about it. We continue to search for new witnesses and confirm the information already obtained, and we will not give up, because something happened near Roswell in July 1947, and 60-some years later, our government and our military have not satisfactorily explained it, even with the 4 excuses we've been given. How many in here have ever heard of the Aztec Incident in New Mexico? About 6 or 7, maybe. 10 months after Roswell, March of 1948, there was an incident in Aztec, which is up in the Four Corners area near Farmington. 99-foot craft, 13 bodies. It was intact, it didn't crash. It came down on a mesa. There were oil field workers up there. They saw smoke up on the mesa in Hart Canyon, and were concerned because they had drip tanks from gas wells, and they thought there was fire up there on the mesa. So they went up there, found this craft, 99 foot in diameter, intact, crawled on top of it, looked inside, and saw 13 badly burned bodies, similar to Roswell bodies, slumped over a panel of some kind. Within about 3 or 4 hours, the military was there from Colorado, cordoned off the area, and we believe took it over to Los Alamos to the National Lab. The author of this book is Scott Ramsey from North Carolina. I've been working with him for the last 12, 15 years. Been to the site several times myself. There have only ever been 2 books written on Aztec, both of them controversial. Scott spent 26 years and several tens of thousands of dollars doing the research. Been to the Air Force Archives in Alabama several times. I would strongly recommend the book, which I do sell for Scott. But it's an incident that at first I didn't put any confidence in. But the longer I worked with Scott and knew about the incident, the more I believe it actually happened. 10 months after Roswell, again in New Mexico. Were they coming back to see what happened in Roswell? We don't know. If it was that or it was a separate incident. But it's an excellent book. If you like good UFO books, that's an excellent one. That's the debris field. Case closed.